Today, we are tackling a huge question. Is international law, the set of rules that governs how countries deal with each other, is it actually real law? Or is it just a bunch of nice ideas that powerful nations can just brush aside whenever they feel like it?
So let's just dive right in. This isn't some new debate. It's a question that people have been arguing about for centuries. On one hand, you've got all the official stuff, treaties, international courts, the United Nations. But on the other hand, you have the brutal reality of war and conflict, which can make the whole system feel like a bit of a joke.
And it is really easy to be a skeptic, right? I mean, you see the headlines about the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, or you hear about detention without trial, or you see these massive environmental disasters. It really paints a picture that international law gets ignored all the time, especially when it gets in the way of a powerful country's agenda.
This skeptical view isn't new. It was perfectly captured way back in the 19th century by a jurist named John Austin. He basically argued that international law isn't law at all. He called it positive international morality, which is a fancy way of saying it's just a set of opinions about what's right and wrong that countries mostly agree on, but it doesn't have the real teeth of actual law. So the whole case against it kind of boils down to a simple checklist. For a law to be a real law in your country, you need three things, right? You need a legislature to make it, a police force to enforce it, and a court system to judge people. And on the world stage, critics say, you don't really have any of those. No world government, no world police, no single world court that everyone has to listen to. But here is a thought. What if we're looking at this all wrong? What if comparing international law to the law in your own country is the big mistake? What if we're judging it by the completely wrong standard?
And this is where things get really interesting, because this is where the big misunderstanding usually happens. See, national law is a top-down system. A government makes rules for its citizens. International law is totally different. It's a horizontal system built between equals. Think of it like a neighborhood. There's no mayor of your street who can order everyone around. Instead, all the households have to agree on the rules for how they're going to interact with each other.
So that's the absolute key. It was never supposed to have a world government or a global police force. Its entire structure is built on the idea of consent and cooperation between sovereign states who see each other as equals. It's a system made to help countries work together, not to boss them around.
Okay, so if this whole thing is built on agreements between equals, that brings up a pretty big question. Who gets to be in the club? Who gets to make the rules? Well, the answer to that has changed. A lot. What started as a tiny, exclusive club has had to open its doors. This system didn't just pop up overnight. Its roots go way, way back to ancient Rome. But the really big changes started happening in the 17th century. A guy named Hugo Grotius came along and argued that law should be based on reason, not just on religion. Then, the Peace of Westphalia created the idea of sovereign states that we still have today. And then you fast forward to 1945 with the creation of the UN, which was this huge moment trying to build a system of collective security for everyone. But even then, the old definitions were, well, they were pretty exclusive. Take this famous one from L. Oppenheim. Notice that term, civilized states. Yikes. That one phrase tells you everything you need to know about who was considered in and who was out. And it totally ignored anyone who wasn't a state. But things have changed. Big time. The club got way bigger. First, huge international organizations like the UN and the World Health Organization were given their own legal status. But the most radical shift was the last one, recognizing individuals. Suddenly, you and I actually have rights protected by international law. And not just rights, but duties too. We can personally be held accountable for things like war crimes. And all of that brings us to where we are today. And let me tell you, if you still think this is all just about war and peace treaties, the true scope of international law is probably going to blow your mind. The truth is, international law is the invisible wiring that connects our entire modern world. That package you ordered from overseas, its journey is guided by international mail treaties. The fact you can fly from one country to another without chaos, that's thanks to international aviation law. It governs pretty much everything, from shipping lanes to satellites in orbit, from deep-sea internet cables to the very air we breathe. And so, over the last 75 years or so, its whole job description has kind of split in two. It used to be all about just helping states get along, setting up the rules of the road so everyone could interact without a total mess. But now, it's taken on this second, much tougher, much more ambitious job, actually trying to control how states behave. It prohibits aggressive war and sets real legal limits on how a country can treat people,
even its own citizens.
All right, so after all of that, let's circle back to where we started. Is it real law? We know it doesn't have a global police force, but does that make it a lie? Well, the reason it works, most of the time anyway, isn't because of force. It's because of something experts call the law habit. It's just in every country's own self-interest to live in a predictable, orderly world. There's also a huge psychological barrier to being called unlawful. It's way more serious than just being called immoral. And here's the real kicker. States themselves act like it's real law. When a country does something, it doesn't say the law doesn't matter. No, it makes a legal argument for why the law is on its side, which proves they actually accept its authority. So here's the final verdict. It is a different kind of law, for sure. It's horizontal, not top-down. It's built on consent, not on command. But is it a real functional legal system? Absolutely. It's imperfect, of course, just like the legal system in any country. But it is absolutely essential for our world to function.
And that really leaves us with one last big question for the future. As we're all facing these massive global problems that no single country can fix, I'm talking about climate change, pandemics, you name it, the real question isn't just, is international law real? It's, do we need to make it even stronger?